Okay. And we are broadcasting.
Yay.
Live from Portlandia. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's webinar. Today's webinar is about how to use your database to leverage your content.
How to build a database.
Right. Not only how to build it, why to build it, how to build it, and then what you do when you have built it. Content marketing obviously is an important thing to do for all businesses, and your database is the way to leverage it. My name is Dave Custon. I'm here with my partner, Wendy Lieber.
Hello.
And we are the founders of ContentBacon, and ContentBacon is a content marketing service. We help our customers easily generate original content, interesting content that helps them connect with their customers and prospects, as well as perform better online. So the things that we're going to cover today, why you need a marketing database, how to create one, and how to use it once you have it.
Well, I was just going to say before you.
Yes. Sorry.
I wanted to highlight this quote by Stan Rapp, who was a famous advertising executive. I think he was born in the early 1900s, but in the 21st century, the database is the marketplace. And I think that's just such a great quote, and it's the foundation of why we are talking about what we are talking about today.
So he's an old dude who said that?
Yes, he is. Yeah, he was part of kind of the early days of advertising.
Quite the visionary.
Yes.
Okay, so we highlight this slide every webinar. We're going to hammer this home every time we get a chance to. And this is why content matters, or rather why content marketing matters. It's really I guess to sort of voice what Stan is saying or was saying, this is the modern way where how people shop, how people do research on a business.
Yeah, I mean, we show this a lot. This is one of my favorite definitions of marketing and why content matters, is because this is what gets people to know, like, and trust you, so they'll buy from you, continue to buy from you, and refer other people to you. So, and I think what I like about this visual is you can go through each area and create different campaigns and different forms of communication to accomplish those goals. So the type of content you create to build awareness is very different from the type of content you'll create, for a referral business. And so I really like this visual even as a planning tool, because I think if you're building out your communication plan, it can really help you understand what content supports which area of this funnel, if you will.
So if, a lot of you that have heard our webinars before, we talk a lot about promotional content versus educational content. Would you say that the conversion content is the promotional content, if it ever was that?
I think it can be. Yeah. I mean, I think, again, the word conversion, it just depends on what the goal is. I mean, sometimes the conversion is an opt-in. That's a successful conversion. If you're,
right.
If you have a great blog and you have a conversion opportunity on your blog for someone to sign up so that anytime you have a new one, they get alerted, that's a successful conversion. That's not necessarily promotional.
A purchase, okay.
But, if you have some type of special on a product or service that you're offering and you send it out and people, buy that, then that's a different kind of conversion.
Okay, so the takeaway there's lots of ways to define conversion.
Yes.
Okay, and there's also lots of ways to define content. And we're not going to repeat all these or read them out to you, but content certainly comes in many forms. And as Wendy pointed out, there's many opportunities or different opportunities or times to use different kinds of content.
Yeah, and I think it's, a lot. I use the word content so much now that I sometimes will forget that people don't always know what it means. And because it is, kind of one of those, not that it's a new word, but it's certainly in some respect a buzzword, content marketing. But content is basically whatever you are using to tell your story, and whatever form that may come in. And these are just a few of the forms that it comes in.
Right. So like in the old days of Stan Rapp, content came in the form of of a corporately branded magazine, let's say.
Yeah.
Ford Motor Company used to put out a magazine, and that's content, right?
Exactly.
So it's really analog has become digital today, but content marketing is nothing new.
Correct.
Okay. So for me, I have coffee. The answer to that question is I have coffee.
Yeah, you don't jump out of bed and anxiously look at your phone to see what.
Do.
Yeah, of course you do. No matter what people tell you, don't look at your email first thing in the morning and all of these great tips. I think for most of us, we tend to look at our email first thing in the morning, and oftentimes it's excitedly, right, to see what happened while you're sleeping.
What did I get?
Yeah, what new communication came in. And so this, it just serves to show how important email still is today. And it's the reason why, we're linking this to this database conversation is because social media is great, and we're big advocates of social media, and social media is a great way to get your message out there, but you don't own that channel. So, Facebook at any time could take Facebook away, and all those connections you have would be theirs, not yours. So email is a great way and it's the most scalable way to reach new customers and build deeper relationships with customers.
Right. Okay. So why invest in a marketing database? As Wendy pointed out, it's a channel that you own. It's context that you own. Just looking at this list, what do you think is maybe the top one or two items that a company should think about when investing in this activity?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say which of these, because I think they're all so important. I think it's a great way, it's a fast way to communicate your news, your promotion, your events. I mean, again, if we're comparing how we communicate today to how we communicated, 20, 30 years ago, I mean, if you had an event that you wanted to get out to your community, you had to use, mail, you had to use radio, you had to use advertising, you had to use telemarketing. And now you could literally decide tomorrow you want to host something, and because of a email database that you've got, you could have that event populated. So I think that's certainly a major advantage of having a marketing database. I think it's also a great way to keep your name front and center with your community, out of sight, out of mind. I mean, we are bombarded with so much information that if your company isn't staying top of mind with your community in a compelling way, when they go to think of your products or services, they may not think of you if you haven't been in communication with them recently. I think for referrals, again, most of us have a good amount of referral sources that we don't really work. And one way to do that is to use email as a way to keep them informed of what you're up to, what you're doing. I mean, I don't know how many times that's happened where, when I've been in communication with referral sources and they're remembering, oh yeah,
they forgot you did something.
Exactly. It leads to new conversations. It's a great way to cross-sell. Instead of having to go out and get new customers, there's a whole, bunch of opportunity with your current customers that if you used email effectively, it could open the doors for that. It's also a great way to get feedback. It's a great way to survey.
I just took a survey 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. So it's a great way to get feedback and figure out, maybe you want to launch a new product and you want to get some feedback. Maybe you want to, hear how your customer service team is doing. It's a great way to get feedback. So I think all of these are, I'm not sure I could tell you the most important.
So they're not, there is no one or two. They're all important. Okay. You guys got that? So. They're all important. Don't interrogate Wendy. She'll be evasive with all the answers, apparently. So building your marketing database, where do you start? So, I can tell you from our experience, we've had a number of conversations with prospects where we're starting to do some work for them, and we ask them, where's your database? Where do you have it? How many contacts are in it? Can't tell you the number of times they say, well, we don't have one, which is kind of baloney. There's some form of one, even if it's your own LinkedIn universe of contacts. So how come companies have such a hard time with this? Why, why is there such, I don't know if it's resistance is the word, but there seems to be a lack of attention to it.
Right. Well, I think in some respects, companies might still be doing things kind of old school way and maybe aren't completely invested in the fact that an ongoing investment in email marketing is going to be effective for them, because that couples with content marketing. So you have to be a believer in that and invest in that, because if you don't have, we're going to kind of bring this full circle. If you don't have compelling content, it doesn't matter how valuable your database is. You're not going to have nothing to send them.
Right.
So I think a lot of times companies go round and round because maybe they don't have the valuable content, and they think, oh, let me start there, and they end up not doing anything. So to your point, we do have this conversation with a lot of our customers, because as we begin developing content for them, one of the first things we tell them is, listen, we want to do at least a monthly newsletter to your community, letting them know about this great new content you're developing. And many of them look at us with kind of blank stares, not knowing where to start, because they have not done a consistent email marketing campaign. So we often coach them through how to start that database and how to build the foundation. And it's really as simple as just doing an inventory of your current assets. So you've got a database probably somewhere. You probably have some type of billing system which may have your customer emails in it. Your salespeople probably have some type of system they've been using. Again, we often find that the sales team might be using a different CRM than the rest of the company. So it's really just about doing an inventory and figuring out where those contacts reside and starting to put them together in a format that you can then upload into an email platform.
So it sounds to me, and this is through what you're saying, and obviously through some of our direct experience, that it takes a bit of discipline to do this if you don't have it, and there might be some discomfort because you got to go data mine over here, and you got to scan business cards over here, and it seems like low value activity perhaps, but it's really the inverse.
No, I mean, again, your database is one of the most valuable things. I mean, even from like a big picture strategic value, if your company if you ever plan to sell it, your database might be one of the most valuable things that another company might buy your company for. So having a database that you continually are communicating with is super, super valuable and a worthwhile use of time. So again, I think it's valuable to go through this a little bit. So you've probably been to trade shows. I mean, everyone's done it. You've collected the leads. Maybe you used you rent their machine, the scanner, and then you do nothing with them.
Right.
I mean, and even if they go back in time, we are going to kind of talk about the, Canspam laws and how to introduce content to your database, even if you have not been in communication with them for a while. But it's worth collecting even some old stuff. I mean, you may have a bunch of, I'm sure that you have a drawer of business cards.
I know I do.
Somewhere.
Stacks.
Yeah. You probably in your inbox have lots of leads that you've never formally, even if you have a CRM system, I'm betting that you also have contacts in your inbox that you've never formally put into your CRM. So it does take a bit of discipline, but it's certainly, LinkedIn, let me just say something about that. With LinkedIn is one of the social media channels where you can actually, in a pretty simple way, export those contacts into a database and then do something with them. And again, we're going to talk about how to introduce, because what you don't want to do is, take all these business cards and contacts and then start sending them irrelevant information. You're going to want to kind of reintroduce yourself to them. But we're talking here about how to build a database, where to start, and building the foundation. And this is how you do it.
Okay. So that's a good segue. So now that you have now that you have a database where you're starting to put one together, and perhaps there's contacts in there that you haven't communicated with either ever or in a long time, how do you go about, what are the do's and don'ts?
So I just wanted to introduce this, the Canspam compliance, because there are some hefty fines you can get if you don't follow this. But really, all of this is you have to include a way for your database to opt out if they do not want to get a way to unsubscribe. That's the essence of this, is that you cannot sell, you cannot be sending out emails and not give them a way to unsubscribe. That's the law piece. Although we're not lawyers, so don't take anything we say.
we only play them on webinars.
But that's the essence of the Canspam compliance. Now, what I will say is, let's just use the LinkedIn example, because lots of us have tons of contacts in our LinkedIn. Some we know very well, some we don't. If you're going to send out email communication to your LinkedIn database, do it like a human being. Like, let them know, like, hey, you can create a mass email that's customized and feels like you're just talking to them, and letting them know how you got their name, why you're reaching out to them, and what you want them to do. And so, an example might be, hey, we're on LinkedIn together. I wanted to get to know you better. I wanted to share some information about my company in case I can be of service to you. Here's some, I put together 10 things you should know about me, and then have an easy way for them to unsubscribe. And that's a way to kind of reintroduce yourself. So, you just don't want to start emailing people coldly without kind of giving them the context of why you're doing it.
Yeah, we like to say around here, context is everything.
Yes.
So what are some of the things you shouldn't do, aside from just blasting someone, maybe from a technical nature, from a best practices nature? What are some of the things that you shouldn't do?
Well, certainly you shouldn't send them completely like promotional email, just selling your services, selling your product, and just blasting them one after another with that. You certainly, as I say here, you shouldn't give your list to anyone else to do that. Mm-hmm. So you shouldn't, sell, if you went to a networking event and those people collected all your info and then they sold it to someone else, and all of a sudden you started, and this has happened to us, right? Like, we've all experienced this, where all of a sudden we show up on some email list and there's nothing more infuriating than it, and then you can't get off of it. You're trying to unsubscribe, and it feels like the more you unsubscribe, the more emails you get. So you don't want to be that company and that brand, because it is infuriating. So you don't want to be overly promotional, and you really do want to give the person you're sending it to an easy way to opt out. You could also conversely do it the other way, which is probably more of a best practice, where you send them an opt-in email, where you send them an email letting them know how you got their name, why you think that they should opt in, and then the ones that opt in go on your list, and then the ones that don't, you don't email again. So that's another way to do it. That's more of a best practice. But what I don't want people, though, to think is, if they haven't emailed their database in a long time, it's not any good. So one of our customers, a realtor, we just had this experience with, who had not done any email campaigns in maybe a year to 18 months. And so he had about, I think it was like close to 5,000 names on the list. We gently reintroduced him to those contacts. So we didn't just send out a blast to all 5,000 people. Now, part of that is because, depending on what email platform you're using, if you send out a whole bunch of emails and you get a bunch of spams, they'll shut you down. So part of it was, selfishly, wanting to protect and make sure that he didn't get shut down. But the other part, probably the more important part, was just using common sense and wanting to make sure that the people we were emailing to actually wanted to hear from him. And so we did it in stages. We made sure the content was really great. It had, his personality, and he got like a great open rate. And now he's got a list that he feels comfortable using. So depending on how old your list is, it just maybe requires a different reintroduction to them. But I don't want people to think that just because they have business cards that maybe, they haven't done anything with, that there's not value there.
Right. Okay. So how do you build, let's say you have an email list, or you want to build through email? What are some of the tactics, best practices for doing that?
Right. So the core of everything is sending remarkable content, right? So let's say you go through your assets, You figure out you've got an email list of, a couple thousand. Well, how do you use that list to then kind of grow it organically? So one is you put together really amazing content for that audience, which then can encourage those recipients to share it. Which again, how many times have you gotten a great email?
Yeah, plenty of
You've
times.
shared it with someone else, then they see it like, oh, I want to sign up for this. I want to continue to get this. So that is a very effective way. If you are consistently putting out great content, your audience will do the work for you. That leads to making sure you start segmenting your database. So a one size fits all approach over time isn't probably going to work. Not to say that in the beginning you may want to do that just to get started and kind of get to know them, but the more you get to know your audience and can segment them into different groups, then you can really customize the content even more. Again, going back to creating remarkable email content. If you've got an old email list, like I mentioned, you can send an opt-in campaign to them to just make sure that those contacts want to hear from you.
And you can get creative with that, right?
Totally creative.
I mean, like a great opt-in campaign might have language that says something like, "We are going to send you something awesome.
Yeah.
Do you want it?"
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's no beating around the bush there.
Right.
I mean, it's sort of promotional in a way, but it's promotional in a way only to get someone to sign up.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean, you want to do that. You want to get creative. You want it to have your personality, and you want to make it worth their time to open the email as well as opt in to whatever you're sending them. And then, it's just the basics, like adding a link to your signature that may take them to a landing page. Again, I think there's pros and cons with this. I've seen, some people's email signature, it's got everything.
It's like a book.
Yeah. And that to me gets a little annoying, but if you've got something compelling to have them opt into, it's a great place to put it.
Right. Okay. Well, that stuff looks familiar. Through content, right? So sort of on a, riffing on a theme here, how do you build or add to your database by leveraging the great content that you have or the remarkable content? What do you do with that? How do you connect that to email database growth?
So blogging is a great way to get more people to your website because it gets your site indexed more. It makes you more searchable. It helps you get found. It gives you content to share through your social media that brings people back to your website. So blogging is key, and having people come back to your blog is going to be a great way to then add to your database because then you'll have an opt-in on your blog and more people will opt in because you're putting out such great content. Having a lead gen offer like a free ebook or white paper, gated content we'll call this, which you see the example there. You can offer something really valuable, really tasty that someone's willing to give you their email address for in exchange. That's a great way to add people to your database. Creating a really valuable free online tool or resource. I'll use HubSpot. They've got Website Grader. It's a great tool that they created that helps you, see where your website's weak and, or strong. Most businesses, doesn't matter what industry you're in, you can probably come up with something like that where people, again, want to use the tool and are willing to give you their information in exchange. So those are all very effective ways to build on the foundation.
Yeah, I opt in for this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, my experience is that usually if the company has gone to the effort of creating something like this, it's usually pretty good.
No, absolutely. I do too. I'm constantly opting into things and happy to do so and happy to get their additional content because it's so valuable.
Yeah. Okay. Website, obviously, for so many of us, our businesses, it's our store. It's the main or maybe even the only point of contact with customers and prospects. So how do you leverage your website?
Yeah, so this kind of goes hand in hand to the content piece that we were just talking about because a lot of the content is leading people back to your website to various landing pages, but making sure you have compelling opt-in opportunities throughout your website so that it's not hard for people to stay in communication with you. that's, again, just kind of low hanging fruit that you should make sure that your site has that. And when we are looking at companies, that's often one of the first things we see is they don't have any way for, they're using their website like an online brochure, and they're missing the opportunity for people to opt in. I think also on your blog, or if you're maybe a little bit more advanced in doing some guest blogging, making sure that you've got something at the end of your blog, like we're showing the example here, that people can opt into. So, because again, if someone's reading your blog and it's, again, you're putting the time and energy to make sure it's really great, that person is probably going to want to stay in communication with you. Right. So that's a great way to build your database.
And so obviously it goes back to the content.
Everything.
You can't do this without having content.
Yeah, you can't do anything. Having a database without content is,
useless.
I'm trying to think of a great example.
Having a car without wheels.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, great. Okay, so social media is not just for. I'll use some extreme examples. It's not just for cat videos, and it's also for the more.
I love cat videos.
Yeah, we all do. Everyone loves a cat video with the cucumbers. That's great. But for the more sophisticated, it's also not just for promoting your content. It can be leveraged to build your database. So talk a little bit about Brendan here and what he's doing through social.
Yeah, so Brendan is a great kind of coach, and he puts out a lot of amazing content on how to have your best life, both in business and personal. And so Facebook, it's probably been a couple years now, but they've changed their opt-in buttons up top where you can now actually provide conversion opportunities. So it's not just you can now have sign up or learn more, or there's a couple other options. So he's using his timeline photo as a great way to drive conversions. So if you hit the sign up, it takes you to a page on his site where there's an opt-in opportunity. And this is, again, this is a great way to use social media to build your database and to get those people that are on your community there to a database that you own, that you control, and that you can leverage. So that's a great way. Again, you can create opt-in opportunities through all of your different social media. Twitter is a great place to do. Pinterest is a great way. LinkedIn is great. You can publish links to gated content on your company page or even in relevant LinkedIn group discussions. So again, if you're providing something really valuable, really educational, posting that kind of stuff in groups is very useful. It's not considered spam. Promoting offers that require email sign up, leveraging your company's YouTube channel. This is a big miss for many companies. People post their videos and then they don't put any way to convert. And there's really easy ways to embed conversion messages throughout your video and different calls to action so that you can, again, drive people to provide you with their email information.
For the uninitiated, those signups that you're referring to, those are the little pop-ups on the video?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. I mean, one, you can just put it in the description, or the title. You can just put your email, but there are ways to embed the actual messages in the video itself that YouTube makes really simple. But yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And same with, Google Plus. A lot of people, maybe aren't using Google Plus, or maybe they've got a Google Plus page, but then they're not using it that much because it never really kind of took off similarly as LinkedIn and Facebook, but it can be really valuable. It gets, we have customers that we do their Google Plus and they get a lot of views, a lot of activity, and it's a great way to communicate offers.
That's great.
But I think all of this is just about how do you've got to have good content and you've got to have that kind of gated content, because all of this is really about gated content that you can then promote through your social media. And this is a piece of a social media strategy. It's obviously not what you want to be doing all of the time, but the timeline photos that's like billboards. That is today's billboards, and we have that on every single social media channel. And very often you'll go to someone's page and they're not using it for a compelling message. So I think that's a missed opportunity.
Okay. Okay. Joint ventures. This is often one of the sexiest or most attractive or shiny object type things. They're also some of the hardest to do, or it can be hard. Making sure everyone, it's a win-win for both
Right.
sides. So what does a JV look like as it relates to building a database and sort of sharing in the wealth of sending out valuable content and then getting people to sign up or engage?
So our definition of a joint venture is a complementary. Well, it's a company, or service. It's a company, and it's like an A player company. So it's someone that's got your same stature that targets the same audience with complementary products. So there's no competition there. So it's really someone that's going after the same audience as you. So that's the first thing, is to really understand what a joint venture is, because then when you start thinking about it, you can actually come up with some ideas on who those might be. So the way to do it is, in the example here, I think the first one is, it's John Lee Dumas, who has a huge following. He has a podcast, EO on Fire. He has, he does a lot with email. So he's promoting this other company, and to his database. He's promoting, what is he promoting here?
Oh, up there.
Yeah, Nick Stevenson.
Yeah.
So he's promoting this other business, this other course. And I think I must have clipped the actual what the offering was, but he's sending it out to his database. So this is a great, just kind of joint venture where, because the community that he's sending out to knows him, trusts him referring this other business, it's like the trust is the know, like, trust is already there. So you get to kind of skip those steps when you do a joint venture, because the people on the receiving end are already trusting that, hey, John Lee Dumas is suggesting this to me, it must be good.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're reputable and you're not just promoting tons of other products, and those get sniffed out pretty quickly, your database will react accordingly. Brian from Samcart, we're Samcart users here, kind of same thing. This is a really reputable company. They invest a lot in content. They do great things. So they're really, like, kind of very boldly, dissing Infusionsoft here.
Very much so.
Yeah, and promoting this other product. So again, just a great way, because the people that use Samcart or know this company, we trust these guys, because they treat us right. They send out really great educational content. So it's a really great way to utilize someone else's database, or conversely, you can provide that value to someone else as a way to start the relationship. Right. And it could be as simple as just emailing a piece of content. So it could start as simple as, hey, wanted to share this great blog post I recently ran across by, XYZ. And it could get much more sophisticated, where it could be promoting some type of paid product where there might be a rev share associated with it. So I don't think these are that complicated. I think they're overlooked. I think there's a lot of scams in this area. So I think that, to a certain degree, they get a little bit of a bad rap. I don't think this is something that you do right away. So if you have not been, providing great content, it's not something you can do right away. You have to build that trust.
You need more equity.
Yeah.
Okay.
But once you have that, and once you have a good database, it's such a great way to provide your database with additional value. So I invite people to look at this not only as a vehicle to do for others, but then think about what other joint ventures there might be in your community that you can start having these discussions with, because it could be a very effective way.
Right. Okay. So this is one of my favorites to talk about, in that it's the marriage of old school media, to use that term, and new school media. And, I don't think that brands do enough of it. But using traditional marketing and advertising, or traditional or offline advertising tactics to build a database. So this is a print ad. This is a picture of a print ad. And there's a call to action to go visit the website. There could even be a stronger call to action, right? Go to this website and do this and get this.
Well, that they're kind of saying it here. I agree, it could be stronger, but the ad has some pictures of some delicious looking food that all contain walnuts, and they're saying for the recipes, go to walnuts.org. So they're telling you where to get this content. And so I think it's a good example. I think, like you said, it could be much, much stronger. And I agree. I look at so many useless print ads, and I don't even understand why companies are investing in those dollars without somehow, creating a link back to some type of useful content where they have the opportunity to collect someone's information. It's just a lost opportunity. So I think it's, if you're doing any kind of direct mail or print advertising, definitely think about how you can link that to a landing page on your site, to some really compelling content, so that you can actually connect the dots.
Make the offline asset work more, harder, better with the online asset.
Right. And we've all seen it probably with more like actual offers. Like you might see something, I'll just use a restaurant as an example, where they may have something where there's a code or something that if you use, that's a way to kind of link the two. But I think it's a great way to bridge the two. But then I think, just again, some of the other traditional ways that we're still out there. I mean, when you're at a trade show, we kind of talked about that at the beginning, right? Because a lot of times we've gone to trade shows and we haven't done anything with the emails. Now, if you're, really into your database and you're focused on that, the next time you go to a trade show, you're going to really be excited about adding more emails to your list and create a program around it. So don't just put the emails in the list and then wait until your next newsletter or whatever goes out. Like, have a welcome email already written that goes out to them automatically. And you can get that, you can set that up so that as soon as a new email is entered into a database, it starts, that campaign. And so that's a great way. So having your own events, again, that's all great ways to collect more email addresses and to grow your database. And we talk about, paid search. You can certainly, everything we're talking about is really organic, but you can invest in paid search, Facebook post, all kinds of things that then take people to a landing page with gated content. And that, to me, is really where, your advertising dollars, you can really see them go to work. Because if you are posting ads, and I'm just going to, stick with Facebook, if you're posting ads on Facebook to sell something, good luck. You're probably not going to, because that's just not how people are wired. They have to get to know you. But if you're giving away something extremely valuable, you're promoting a webinar or some type of event, people are willing then to, they'll click on your ad, they'll sign up, and then you have an effective ad campaign for whatever you're promoting and building your database. So,
and HubSpot does that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're always spending dollars to get you to their content.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay. So we have this conversation quite a bit too, and we, externally with our customers and even for ourselves, should I buy or build a database, or rather, this particular slide says, should I purchase one? The inverse is building one, which we've been discussing. But there's pros and cons to purchasing a database. I know in my experience, I don't think a purchase database typically performs as well as a built one.
Never.
The bounce rate, the spam rate can be very high. The cons are I think pretty strong, right? I mean, you don't want to send anything to an outdated list.
Yeah, I think as a general rule, buy versus build, build is always going to win, because a built database is always going to be higher quality than a purchased one. And I'd rather have 100 high quality names to start with and grow organically from than 1,000 crappy names that never do anything. But with that being said, there are some pros. So most inbound marketing experts have a very kind of black and white view of this, and it's just don't ever buy a database. I mean, I've had experiences where it can help kickstart some things, and when done correctly, it can start to create a sales funnel. So I think that if you are going to purchase a database, that you have to be very, very clever about how you approach them and how you get them to opt in, and kind of how you then kind of move them along the sales funnel.
Okay.
And so I think you just have to be very careful on you don't want to buy a big database, import them into Constant Contact, and send out something.
Because you're going to get bounced.
Yeah, you're going to get bounced. You're going to get shut down. You're going to, piss a lot of people off. But there are ways, you can introduce yourself to a paid list that, can result in success. We have customers that use paid list. They with emails, with surveys, with follow-up phone calls, and over time it starts to build a quality database for them.
All right. So here's just a bit of a recap on leveraging your database, as well as some different kinds of things to send, right?
Yeah.
Content-wise.
Right. So, the title of this webinar was How Do You Build a Database? And so we've talked about that. We've given you tips on how to do it, but everything is really related to content. So it's hard to have the discussion on how to build a database without, not only you're going to have some content to build the database, but then you're also going to want to create programs to how do you leverage your database, and what do you do with it? So if I have a database of 10,000 people, what do I do? What do I send? So newsletters are one of the most effective way to nurture leads, to stay in communication with your customer base. And it's just such a great thing to have as part of your, communication schedule. So I think having a weekly, a monthly, quarterly is better than nothing. I think monthly is best, but having a newsletter schedule and then sticking to it. And it's really just a combination of your, blog topics, upcoming events. Maybe you want to promote some things that you've seen out there that you want to share. Maybe it's, some company news, but it's such a great way to stay in front of your audience. So to me, and if you've listened to any of our webinars, this is one of our 4 foundations, that you must have a newsletter. Then having a weekly or monthly blog digest. So again, a blog is one of the most powerful pages on your website. And not only should you be promoting it through your social media or your newsletter, but periodically, you can email a digest of the most popular blog posts for a chosen time period. So this, again, is key. And then kind of getting a little bit more granular as you add people to your database, having those welcome emails already written, ready to send out is great. Checking in with your database periodically, letting them know the type of emails that are available, and maybe they can change their preferences. So if you've been emailing people for 6 months or so, and maybe you've got different types of emails, you can let them know, like, hey, a lot of times I've opted out of something weekly in favor of something monthly, but I've still stayed opted in because they've given me that choice. Sometimes I will start out like with daily, and then that becomes too much. So
fatigue.
Yeah. So I think checking in periodically and giving your database the option is really helpful. Meteor content. So this is kind of like dual purpose content, right? So if you're creating that gated content that we've been talking about that you use for your lead hooks, well, you can also use it for those people in your database that haven't received it. So let's say I put together some great resource guide on how to come up with compelling headlines. Well, I can use that as my gated content to grow my database, but then I probably also want to send that out to my current database to let them know, like, hey, I've put this together. I want to share it with you. So you can use it for dual purpose. Event promotion, that's a kind of a given when you have events. Short-term nurtures. So what this is let's say within your newsletter, you've got, different types of content. Maybe you have, some of this meteor content that's there. You can create nurture campaigns depending on what people are doing. So people that are clicking on certain things may get a series of emails. The person who opted in for the resource guide may get a series of 3 to 5 emails, immediately after that. So short-term nurture campaigns are based on the action that the person took and the way they opted in, and are created specific to them. videos, client welcome emails. This is, kind of like it's something overlooked. You sign on a new customer, have something really great that you send them to welcome them and let them know what to expect and all that good stuff. These are just,
pretty self-evident,
yeah,
self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Customer feedback or reviews. We talked about that a little bit. You can use it also to prompt, let people know about different areas of your website. It's a great way to promote different areas of your website people might not know about,
right.
Or, social media. You might even use it to highlight things on your social media that people, may not be seeing. Like I belong to a really great private Facebook group called Internet Marketing Supers, and they were smart enough to realize, at some point Facebook may take this group feature away. So they created an opt-in list that now someone on a weekly basis highlights the most popular post in that group and sends it out. And it's great. It's a great way for me to sometimes see what's been happening in the group if I haven't been on that page. So there's no shortage of ideas on how to leverage your database, but it all comes back to creating compelling content on a consistent basis.
Right. Okay. So in summary, and we're going to get to questions in just about a minute. So get your questions ready. Content, obviously, we're advocating for a lot of content, but building an email list is vital. And having that database, having that email list to share your content with is critical in a number of areas. Certainly you don't want to be the business owner that says, forget that database stuff, because it's really valuable to have, because as we said in the beginning of the webinar, it's one of the channels that you can own.
Right.
Imagine the business that was built on MySpace, communicating with MySpace, they're gone, right? You don't want to be the business owner that regrets it, or the marketing director that is fired because of it. So building a list today is something that we certainly advocate for. So we're going to get to some questions, and let me just check real quick here. Okay. What's a good email system? Thank you, Angela. What's a good email system or CRM software? So I think of these in sort of two different buckets, right? I think of the MailChimps of the world in one category, and the Infusionsofts and the HubSpots,
for sure,
and the Marketos in another. So, which one should you invest in? Does it depend on how big your list is, how sophisticated you are?
Yeah, I think that they all have their pros and cons. We're big advocates of MailChimp because it has a nice hybrid of the features. So it's kind of got the basics like a constant contact, but then it does utilize some of the more sophisticated features that a Infusionsoft has. So I like MailChimp, but we use all of them for our customers. We use HubSpot, we use Infusionsoft, we use Constant Contact, we use iContact, we use Vertical Response, we use Mad Mimi. So we use them all.
Why is Mimi mad?
I don't know, because no one's been using her enough, I guess. So if I had to choose one, I would say start with a MailChimp and then grow from there. We use Hatchbuck, which is also kind of a combination of CRM and email.
Mm-hmm.
So
Angela's asking about Insightly. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah.
Any opinion, good, bad, or indifferent?
I think they're great.
Yeah, I guess the takeaway is to have one and to do something, right? Rather than do nothing.
Yeah, so Infusionsoft, is often referred to as
Confusionsoft. Yes.
So again, we have customers that use it that love it and have experts on their team, and they really use it for its full value. But that may be overwhelming.
Yeah.
So use something that you will use, and something that you're comfortable with, and then you can always grow from there.
Okay. So I know for me, like one of my, I mentioned it a couple of minutes ago, is email fatigue. I subscribe to HubSpot. I might get 2 or 3 a day, let alone 2 or 3 a week. How do you deal with something like that? maybe both as the recipient and as the brand.
Right. So it all has to do with when someone signs up. So when someone signs up for something, if someone opts in for something, that is kind of when you want to hit them the heaviest. So that's when you have kind of these nurture campaigns already ready to go. So if someone opts in, and this is what HubSpot does. So if you opt in for an ebook, you are going to, for probably the next 7 to 10 days, get daily emails. And then it'll start to become less and less until it finally tapers off. So it really depends on the action, because all of these actions that people are taking are cues to whether they want to do business with you. So if someone opts into something and you're sending them these campaigns daily and they're not doing anything, well, but they're not opting out, that may be a cue that they're interested, but they're not ready to buy. So you start to taper them off. So I think the rule of thumb is when someone first opts in for something, you could email them daily, no problem. After they've been, around, for a couple weeks, may go to weekly. If someone's, opted in and hasn't taken additional steps, you may get them down to once a month. But I think at a minimum, after all is said and done, everyone on your database, you should be touching at least once a month at a minimum.
Okay. So speaking of that, it's a good segue. So how often we're saying once, what is the best time and or day to send communication out?
Yeah. So there's lots of data about this. I think it depends on your database and kind of your database, kind of their habits. So you're going to get the best info by looking at your own stats. But, there's some rules of thumb that, early mornings are good, and even weekends. A lot of times people rule out weekends. There's a lot less competition, and that's sometimes when people have time. So, early mornings and weekends, there are some kind of times that are considered the dead zone. They say from like 10 a.m. to 12 is like the dead zone. That's usually when people kind of heads down, getting work done. And then, from 10 p.m. to, 5 a.m. is a dead zone.
Okay.
So I think, you got to test some things. I mean, we've had really good success sending things on a Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. And
I always thought that was a bad time.
Yeah. So I think I remember a couple years ago, if you were to ask that question, it would be Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 12.
Right.
And I think, again, there's so much competition that you want to figure out what's the right time. I also heard a stat recently, like the most popular time when the most people are on their computers was something like 8:43, Eastern Standard Time. So.
Okay. All right. I think that wraps up our question and answer section of the webinar. As always, Wendy and I are here to provide value, answer questions. Much like we preach, where if someone wants to have a conversation with us, it's going to be about them, not us. So you can reach us at founders@contentbacon.com or the phone number below.
I don't think that's the right phone number.
I think it's incorrect, yes. So we have a new phone number. So don't call us there. But email us at founders@contentbacon. And we're happy to talk about what you're doing, what you want to do, what you'd like to do more of. Again, we'd make it about you and not about us. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.